My new book, Peace Over Pain, is now available. You can buy it for $20 on Amazon, or you can download it for free inside my exclusive Facebook group. Simply go to peaceoverpain.com/join the group. And between the group and the book, you will learn how to eliminate chronic conditions.
Welcome to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese, a program that can help you become liberated in the modern world. Now, here's your host, Dr. Kevin W. Reese.
Do you know who the first health influencer was? Welcome to episode number 153. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with the 96-year-old Elaine LaLanne, who is the wife of the great Jack LaLanne. In this talk, we're going to discuss everything Jack invented, everything he did to create this health movement that we know now in the United States of America and arguably throughout the whole world. So sit down, relax, and take in this beautiful recording. Let's begin. Elaine LaLanne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kevin.
What was your first date like with Jack?
It was kind of exciting because I found out about it. 30s, 40s, and 50s. They thought muscle men were they didn't have much upstairs and they would die, And I turned him down a lot. And one time I said yes, we'll go out to dinner. I got off the air at 6 o'clock because our show was on from 4:30 to 6, and so he picked me up and because his show was on in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
He picked me up and I met his friends. One was a chiropractor, one was a mortician, had owned a mortuary, and their wives were with them. And so we went over and we were waiting, and so we went to the Huntington Hotel and to the bar there, and sat and talked, and I thought, my gosh, he's really smart. And we talked about life and about the mind. See, a lot of people said, oh boy, that guy's got a body, and I said, honey, I didn't fall in love with his body. I fell in love with his brain. So that's when I found out that he's really, really got it up here.
Yeah.
So then we went to, we went over to the restaurant. We were going to, we had danced at a company party, and I thought, oh, he's a good dancer. So now I find out he's got a good mind. And then we went to this restaurant, and it was our table wasn't ready, so we went to the place next door, and the Jack was a singer. He had a beautiful voice, and one time he wanted to be an opera singer, but anyway, so the pianist recognized him when we went in there, and he says, "Hey, Jack, come over here and sing a song." So he went over and he sang this song, "Because You're Mine, da 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 dee, da da da." Oh my God, he sings too, beautiful voice. So
He does everything.
And he could dance. He's smart, and he's got a mind. And he can sing, and and it was that was the beginning of it.
And then on one of your dates, you guys were making a shake with the blender, right? And
yeah,
you had carrot juice.
Yeah, I had never tasted carrot juice in my life, and he had this great big juicer. So he made me some carrot juice, and I thought, oh gosh, this is really good. And I changed my whole eating. I was a junk food junkie, and I had chocolate donuts. I'd walk into the studio in the morning. He'd be just before his show went on, and I would have the chocolate donut, and then he he said, you know, the only thing good about the donut is the hole in the middle. And I mean, he was really funny. I mean,
Yeah.
Jack had a fantastic sense of humor.
Based on the book, you guys were making like a
Oh,
breakfast.
the protein drink?
Yeah, and it became
breakfast?
it became an
Oh.
instant supplement.
Yeah, the instant breakfast. We had a little help. I had finally gone to work with Jack over in Oakland, and he had wanted me to go to work with him. And after I was off television, I went over to work with him. So we had a little health food store, and then my office was above it, and we were making this drink, and he was in the blender, and we had non-fat milk solids, a wheat germ, and all sorts of good stuff. And so he says, you know, this could be your instant breakfast. Let's go over and to my friend and have a make it. He's a biochemist. And so Jack went over with all the ingredients he wanted in, and then Mel Williamson, he was also a student of his. He helped put it together, and we came out with instant breakfast.
There it is. Look at that.
And that was in the probably 1955 or 6.
Mm.
And later on, when we moved to Los Angeles, we had Carnation instantized. Now they were doing instant milk, you know.
Yeah.
And so they were had this instantizing, so that now they instantize our protein drink. Before that, we had to put it in a blender and blend it up, you know.
Right.
Well, so that's how instant breakfast got started.
Yeah, and the thing with Jack that always inspired me from, let's just say, about 10 years ago, a little bit before he passed, I saw an interview with him where they were, you know, they always ask health gurus what you eat and how you live, right? Because everyone wants to know. And they ask him, do you take any supplements? And he says, I take everything from A to Z.
Yes.
That's what he says. And that really rang a bell with me, because in my work at my clinic, we put people on supplements, because why rely on the food when we have this new technology to up the nutrition? And Jack was on that very early.
Oh, really early. Yeah. Well, I mean, here, look at this. Here's a high protein.
Yeah.
That's in 1950 something. And then early 50s. Here's supplement, Vitalane. That was in the 50s. He believed in supplementation because he didn't feel that that all the food that was grown, it was turned over and turned over and turned over.
That's right.
And he didn't feel that the nutrients were coming from the earth. So he really believed in supplement. He had handled, well, to this day, I take supplements.
Yeah.
I mean, I take about, if I take lots of vitamin C, lots of I have a nutrient supplement that has everything in it, but
yeah,
I also add D3 and zinc, and you name it.
Well, Jack's
lutein for my eyes.
Yeah, Jack's belief has been proven to be true, because we know now through science that the fields are barren, they're depleted.
Yeah.
And we're not getting, it's worse now than it was back then, the 50s.
Well, that's what he was saying then when I first met him in the 50s. And he's been saying this for, he's at his first studio in 1936.
Yeah. He also predicted enzymes. And now we all use enzymes.
he always talked about enzymes. That's going to be the coming thing. That's going to be the coming thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. And now what would we do without enzymes for people that, had their gallbladder taken out and things like that? You need that supplementation to digest the
Yeah.
food, you know?
No, I supplement all the time. We don't have any our own product anymore, but we were one of the forerunners of it.
So how old are you now, Elaine?
96. I'll be 97 in March.
Wow.
So there I'm still perking along, writing books and stuff.
And so you were
working out and see, I still have a little muscle left.
all right. There you go. 96 is a heck of a run. And of course, Jack made it to 96. But the thing that makes it different, the thing that always inspired me, because of course, I was introduced to Jack LaLanne in his older years. I didn't know Jack on TV in the 60s and 70s. I didn't know Big Jack. I knew old Jack.
Yeah, right.
But the thing that was always amazing to me was that not only did it wasn't just that he lived till 96. It was that he was so vital.
Yeah.
He had so much energy.
The energy, yes. And he cared so much. He really, if I heard him say it once, I've heard him say it thousands of times. All I want to do is help people to help themselves.
Right.
And I mean, that was his goal. That was his mission in life. When you read my book about it, I took all his writings that I'd saved from him. You should see them. They're just some I've read, in his writing, and some I had already typed up because we were going to do a column, but the fellow was going to do the column with us died, but we never did. And so I had all of that. I had all of those little columns which I put in the book too, which was Greg Justin's. He helped me put it all together. And it's amazing. And through the thread that goes through all of his writings is what's between your ears, your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And he always said, your mind is a mine. It's full of diamonds. And all you have to do is dig them up. And when you do that, you have inner peace, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, that's another thing I loved about Jack is that it wasn't just all fitness and it wasn't just all nutrition. He also talked about the mind, which he generally used the term attitude.
Attitude.
To have the right attitude. Yeah.
That I could never, you can never say anything negative around Jack. If it's a halfway negative, he'll say, yeah, that's negative. That's negative.
Yeah.
He was positive about everything.
Yeah.
No matter what happened. I mean, the world could cave in and he could still say, he'd still be positive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great because now we know, again, through science, that you can actually create problems in the body through the mind if you're thinking negatively, and you can create pain. And
yes. And your mind controls your body.
Yes.
Yes. He says, as I said before, everything starts here. He says, what wiggles your finger? What wiggles your finger? Your mind. Wiggle your toes and wiggle your fingers. You have to think about it, wiggling it.
Now, Jack also trained as a chiropractor.
Yes.
How come he didn't refer to himself as Dr. LaLanne, or did chiropractors not have that title back then?
He didn't mention he was a chiropractor until probably he let it out around the 80s or so, because he worked with the MDs, and the MDs were not they didn't believe in the chiropractic so much and now and so when the chiropractors and the MDs started to work together, then he was able to mention it, but he had too many in his gym in Oakland. He had so many doctors working out, and he put them on programs, and he didn't want he
didn't want to shake the tree.
no, and they called him a crackpot and a nut and a charlatan for charging money to exercise, you
Right.
know. So that's how it went.
Yeah, and he became the first health influencer through the television.
I like the way you put that, influencer, because there were a lot of people into health, you know. There's Paul Bragg that was inspirational for Jack. And way before even Paul Bragg, there were people out there doing calisthenics and things like that. And what was a Sandow and all those, there was, but in the bodybuilding, Jack was, yes, he was a bodybuilder, but he also, you know, he wanted, when he trained his body, he wanted symmetrical. It should be symmetrical. And you just see on the cover of the book how he's trained his body, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what he strived for and he wanted everybody to strive for, you know, a healthy body. He says you don't have to be a Mr. America to do it. You know, you just have to watch what you put in your mouth and exercise.
Yeah. And have ageless attitude.
Ageless attitude. Yeah.
Yeah. And you put that in the book where he talks about sort of his philosophy of, you don't say this is aging, say this is ageless, you know.
Right. That aging in the book, that was all written in hand, you know, and I had to decipher that one out. But he had, you know, this attitude here and this attitude there, you know, and one was negative and one was positive.
Yeah. How often would you guys go out and about, and would Jack
every night?
How often would Jack get recognized in public?
Everywhere. Well, Jack would be like this. He'd have his fork almost up to his mouth, and someone would come over and say, Jack LaLanne, and Jack would put his fist down and said, how are you? And he would talk to him. I mean, there's many times when I even first met him that we were out to dinner and somebody would, and this was in San Francisco, and this was in the early 50s. And so somebody would come over to him and talk to him, and can you come over and meet my family? And so I would sit there all by myself for a while he went over and talked to them. I mean, this is the way he was. He was always willing and never complained.
Yeah.
And through the book, you'll see all these writings from people that not one of them ever heard him complain. And that's one of the things that they say about him.
Yeah. He was very positive. And, you know, like a lot of us that get into health, it starts with pain. And Jack knew pain because he was a sickly kid until he went to a lecture and saw Dr. Bragg, right? And when he was 15 years old, I believe.
He also had a football injury in high school. And he had, the doctor that operated on him said he probably would never walk properly again. And so he proved, I mean, he was set out to prove him wrong, because he devised that leg extension machine, and there's a hill in Berkeley, California. That's where he was living. It's like straight up, and he started at the bottom, and that was his goal, to get to the top after that leg injury.
Wow.
used to. There's stories that some of his friends told about him, how they would take the ferry over from Oakland to San Francisco and walk all the way up to the theaters, and he would be walking, on his cane, or not, I mean, on his crutch. And anyway, he's determined. I mean, he knew pain. I mean, he knew pain.
Yeah.
I mean, when you could paddleboard from 30 miles from the Farallon Islands to San Francisco, and you've got to have pain. And when you and towing 70 people in 70 boats on his 70th birthday.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pain, but never once did I hear him. I know he was pain.
I mean, I know a lot of 70-year-olds, and I don't know any of them that are going to do anything like that.
No.
And what's your reaction? Because you're about 10 years younger than he was. So you were probably 60 at the time?
I'm 11 and a half years younger than he.
Okay, so you were like 59 at the time. He's 70, and he's saying, I'm going to do this on my 70. What's your reaction?
My reaction is, well, I mean, he'd already swam from, Alcatraz to the mainland when he was in his 41, and underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, underwater. And so, when he's at 60, when he said he was going to go to San Francisco and tow a 1,000-pound boat and handcuffed, and his ankles would be shackled, I said, you gotta be kidding. I said, you're not nuts. But undaunted, he went and he did it, and he trained for a long time. I used to, there's in the book, I have the picture of me pouring ice on him. So before he went to San Francisco to do this swim, he sat in a bathtub. I used to go down in Los Angeles, and on La Brea they had a ice house, and so you could go and buy as much ice as I could buy 50 pounds. So I would buy 50 pounds of ice, bring it back. He'd sit in the bathtub in his bathing suit, and I would pour the ice on him. And he'd sit there for an hour in that ice. Now that's got to be painful. I mean, talk about pain. So
how much news coverage did they get back then?
Oh, they got a lot of news all over the world on those swims, on those, the Alcatraz swim, because Alcatraz was very, famous. I think the Alcatraz was probably the more famous ones than Long Beach, but still in all, it was all over the world. And then he also, on his 65th birthday, he towed 65 boats with 6,500 pounds of Louisiana wood pulp in them in Lake Oshinoko in Japan. And so that was another one that wasn't easy,
Yeah.
But you get these, and a lot of people say, well, what did he do that for? Well, he did it because he wanted to call attention to his philosophy or working out. Look, I'm 60 years old, or I can do this. And if I can do this, you can do something. You know what I mean? So it was mostly to motivate people, not to show off. He didn't do it. He never did. Jack basically was a shy person. I mean, you wouldn't believe it, but he really was. And so he did this to, just for motivation and encouragement to people. If I can do it, look what you could do.
He was also big in the visualization. He visualized the goal, right?
Yes. I could hear him saying right now, I can visualize I can visualize coming out of the water, and and then and in my house, or we bought property, and there wasn't anything on the property, and so he visualized, I want the gym here, I want this here, I want that there, and he visualized it, he plants here, and it turned out just exactly. Though I'm not that great about that, but he was phenomenal about his visualization. He would see things the way they should be, or he thought, and that's the way it turned out.
So how did Jack, he had this great life. He influenced a lot of people, including myself. But what was the end like? How did he meet his demise? Because he was so vital all the way up to the end, right?
Well, when Jack would, if there's anything negative would happen, or when he'd just clam up. So he just clammed up, didn't say anything. And I knew he was ready to go. He had pneumonia, and one lung had collapsed, and so I said to him, and he always used to say to me, "I'm sticking around for you. I'm sticking around for you," and so I said to him, he used to sing to me, "If you were the only girl in the world," and so I sang to him, "If you were the only boy in the world," and so I said, "If you want to go, you could go," and he went. That's it. That's happened to a lot of people I know, though. When you let them go, like if your mom is ready to go, let her go. If you're, and that's what I tell my kids. I said, when I'm ready to go, I want to go. Don't keep me around, and don't keep saying, "Oh, you can," just let me go.
Yeah, like that permission, that.
Yeah, they want permission, right? And I learned that from a friend of mine who was passing away, and she was, and so her kids kept saying, "Mom, you could get it," and she kept rallying and rallying, and finally they said, "Okay," and bang, she went. I mean, so I learned that a long time ago.
Jack used to joke around in interviews that he can't die or it'll ruin his reputation.
Oh yeah, he'd always say, "I can't die; it'll ruin my image."
So when he did get sick, was there any? I would imagine his goal was probably to make it to 100. 100 is like this big.
Well, I don't think I never heard him say he wanted to make it to 100. I never heard him say anything about how long he wanted to live.
Okay.
I never, and same with me. I'm 96. I'll be 97, and whenever I go, I go. I mean, I'm ready to, I've been there, done that, seen that,
Yeah.
and so it's not something that I think about, and he never thought about dying. I mean, but he was always accepted what was, what was happening. So
Right.
he was accepting it, and you'll see this in the book too. Whatever happens to me, it's my fault.
Yes.
Remember that in the book.
Yes.
I mean, that was his philosophy. Anything that happens to me, it's my fault.
Yes.
So, and he never blamed anybody else. There was never the blame game, that blame it on this or blame it on that. We don't play that game.
Right.
I don't play that game. And Jack never played that game.
Victim-oriented thinking.
Whatever happens to me, I blame myself.
Right. And that I'm the same way. That doesn't necessarily mean you get down on yourself.
No, no.
It just means, it's accepting of your situation.
Well, I think this is part of your inner peace. I mean,
Yes.
you have this inner peace program,
Hmm.
and I got to thinking about, that gives you inner peace. If you accept what is, can't change it. I lost my daughter when she was 21
Mm,
in an automobile accident.
mm,
Okay, now I can't bring her back.
mm,
So now I can blame this and blame that, or I could do this, or I mean, I can, and have a little pity party for myself.
mm,
And,
right.
she would never want that. She would never want that. So I just took her philosophy and went on about my life and missed her and talked to her. And of course I had a few tears, but um, you have to go on. You have your life. You have to go. You have to do.
And she wouldn't want you to be
No.
she wouldn't want you to be a wreck
Oh,
and
no,
ruin your life,
oh,
right?
sure. She would never want that. And I wouldn't want it. And I said, my kids, I said, I don't want one tear when I go.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah, death comes up a lot on this
And I said, I
podcast.
can't wait to find out what's over there.
Yeah, that's if you treat it like a new adventure.
Well, it's part of life.
Yes.
You come into this world and then you leave it,
That's right.
That's part of life.
That's
So
right.
there you go.
And some people die young. Some people die at birth. Some people
Right.
die at 5 years old, 50 years old. They
I
keep,
used to talk to people who had lost children. One year I got a call from a lady who was a president of a bank, and she had lost her little boy in a swimming pool, and he was very young. And then my friend, the Petersons, had lost their two boys in an airplane crash. They were on another plane, and it was a private plane, and they were on another plane other than their parents with their friends, and went down on an airplane. And we used to talk to people who had lost children, and it helps them to talk to other people who have had the same experiences.
yeah, it comes up a lot on this podcast. And even one episode, I brought on a hospice nurse,
Yeah.
and I went as deep as I could as an interviewer to all the deaths that she had to encounter through her career and all the stories. And I just get as close to it as you can
Yeah.
because it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Right. So it's just, to me, it's part of life. And so I just don't think, I don't know what happens afterwards. I mean, I just have a feeling that our spirit goes on, and lives on in the people I've known, and who knows what happens. I don't know. It could be a radio wave. You might turn out to be a radio wave,
Right.
or like something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to think about what
Or steam coming off of a lake or something like,
Yeah. Whatever. Whatever makes you happy.
Well, I think people just don't want to let go of what they have. And so it comes back to being 2 years old again and give me back my toy, right? It's like you don't want to let go of what you have, especially if you're young.
Right.
It's probably easier for someone like you who's lived such a full life.
It's easy for me. It's easy for me. Yeah.
But
My daughter was only 21.
Right. Did she go fast, or was she in the hospital for a while?
Well, she was, see, I don't know, because we were in Europe, and it was back east, and she was in summer stock, and they were driving into town, and the car rolled over, and then she was laughing and talking. That's what they tell me, laughing, and nobody else in the car was hurt. And evidently she was bleeding internally, so she just bled to death inside, I guess. But she was laughing and talking in the hospital, they tell me. And then all of a sudden she went. I know it. So that's, that happens.
Yeah.
But, you can't change things.
No.
Right.
It's just part of it's part of the deal,
Right.
It's like you go to a rock concert, you're gonna hear noise,
Right.
You play football, you're gonna get hit. So it's just part of the deal. So, but when you have this attitude that Jack taught, this ageless attitude, you can live such a better life.
Right. Well, people think maybe this book might be the same old stuff they've read. It's not the same old stuff in my book. It's a even my cousin said, I found stuff in there and that about you that I mean, very close to her. I didn't know this about you and Jack. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. And of course the way when I was writing this book, and I wanted to make it flow. Like when you put all this stuff together, it has to flow. And so I wanted it to flow from here to here to here to here. And I think I finally, it took us 3.5 years, but I think I was inspired with my own book.
No, it's a good book, Pride and Discipline, and it's almost like a scrapbook with stories in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little. Well, I was working with Greg's and just assistant too, and they'd say, "Well, that's interesting, but could you say just a little bit more?" So I would make sure that I would make it them understand what I'm talking about, how it would flow into the next writing. And the writings are short, they're not long, boring. I mean, I don't like long, boring stuff. So I think it's, and Jack is very simple. Everything he did was keep it simple. He said, keep it simple, keep it simple. He liked things as simply said. Yes. And concise. He concised everything.
Yeah.
Life is great when you're in shape, stuff like that. So it is a lot of his sayings, is
LaLanneisms.
Yeah. So
like
anything in life is possible if you make it happen, or you can make it happen.
Yeah. Or fitness is king, nutrition is queen. Put them together, you have a kingdom.
Yeah, got a kingdom, right? Yeah, stuff like that, and of course the humor. There's a chapter on humor there, and Keith Morrison from Dateline, used to come up and interview him about every 5 years. And he tells a lot of little stories about Jack in there.
There's some big names in there. Arnold Schwarzenegger's in the book. Lou Ferrigno is in the book.
Lou Ferrigno does a foreword. Tony Danza, Gary Player.
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. Denise Austin,
Denise Austin, yeah.
So it's, they've all had something to say. Forbes Riley.
Jack, I mean, he was America's health influencer. I mean, everyone knew him for so long. I mean,
yes. Well, everywhere we went, people would recognize him. And then when he did the juicer, I mean, that brought it back again. And then we'd be in an airport and they'd say, "Hey Jack, I got your juicer. Hey Jack." So he loved people. He just loved to joke with them. He was really a joker.
Yeah.
You'll see it in the humor, in the humor part of the book.
So,
And then the story of his life, I mean, in pictures, kind of in the back of the book. My son did that. Danny, he's a photographer, and we dug out all these pictures, and it's kind of a timeline, pictures of Jack when he was little, and then all the things that happened in his life until he died,
yeah.
And
And a lot of people don't know that he invented a lot of equipment too. A lot of fitness equipment.
no, oh no, he invented the leg extension machine. He invented the like the wall pulleys that you pull down, and the squat machine. It's now the Smith machine, and the weight selector. See, in those days, they had, in the early 30s, they had clean and jerk, and then all these bodybuilders. And so Jack, when he came up with an idea of having something modern, he had glass block showers in the 30s. They were very popular. And he had a sauna thing. You'd sit in this thing, and it would be a sauna, and it would be only your head would be out,
Right.
One. I said, oh, that's a really old-fashioned one. And but he admitted that's when he got his ideas on the squat. I mean, on the leg extension machine, because of his injury in football.
Right.
And of course, when he went in the service, he was 4F because he couldn't do a full squat. If you ever see his shows, you'll notice he'll go way down on one leg and then real kind of half down on the other leg. And so when he invented the leg extension machine, that helped him with his own leg too,
Yeah.
And pull wall pulleys, and what else? And but the weight selector is something that you've got to squeeze. Today they have pin selectors, and then you can use a pin to select the weight with the pulleys. But he came out they had pulleys in those days, but they didn't have a weight selector. And this weight selector that Jack has is a squeeze. It's in the book. It's a picture of it. And you squeeze it, and then you push this down, because in those days the weights had a hole in the middle, and because the bars would go through this, and you could have the barbells and the dumbbells, and then we would lift up the weight. Well, this weight selector goes down with the pulley, goes down into the hole, and then opens up and locks it. And then you pull up the amount of weight, 10, 20, or 30 pounds, or 40, or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I explained that properly or not, but
No, that's fine. I think the bottom line is he did a lot of pioneering work.
Yeah,
That everyone's into now.
he told me years ago, somebody asked him, where do you think this physical fitness is going, Jack? And I can still hear him saying, it's going to explode. And it has.
It sure has. Sure.
I've got personal trainers. And when you think of it, Greg Justice, my co-author, he came up with this in the book, that Jack was really the first virtual trainer.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? You're right, because he was doing it on television, and I guess that's pretty virtual.
Yeah. That's Instagram before Instagram.
Yeah,
YouTube
Greg
before
came
YouTube.
up with that concept that Jack was the first virtual trainer, because we didn't know what virtual trainer would be in those days, but now
Right.
look back, he was.
So Pride and Discipline, available now on Amazon. I encourage everyone to go get that book. As we wrap up here, what's a day in the life of Elaine LaLanne like at 96 years old?
Well, I'm in this office 24/7. I've always got a project. All my life, I've worked all my life, and I don't know what I would do without it. I've the last 6 years before this was before this book, I did a book with Jamie Brinkus. And 8 minutes a day gets you on your way. I mean, it's exercise and nutrition.
Mm.
So I've been doing that for the last 6 years, but I'm always into something new. We're doing promotions on the book. I'm going to get an award. I just gave a award to Billy Blanks from Idea at the Idea Convention this last July. In this November, I'm going to go to Orlando, Florida, and I'm going to pick up a award on behalf of Jack too, and also it'll be from the ACLM. Let's see, American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and Ken Cooper will also get a Lifetime Achievement Award. And there'll be all these doctors and whatnot there in Orlando, Florida in November 13th. So I'll be doing, so I'm keeping busy, and we're doing PR for the book, and I'm a little slower these days. I don't move around as fast as I used to because of a leg injury, but that's it. Are we going overtime?
No, not at all. So the key is staying busy, being passionate about.
Staying busy. The key is staying busy, and that's what I do. I just keep busy every day. There's something comes up every day. I don't know. There's something to take care of, and I've got a lot of property here to take care of, and family and whatnot. So I'm just.
Are you still in
Not
California?
enough time in the day. As you get older, the faster the time goes. I've often think back to when I was young, and I said, "Oh gosh, and now when you get the older you get, the faster the time goes. Now, whether you're slower, I don't know, but I know I am."
Are you still in California?
What's that?
Are you still in California?
Yes.
Okay.
Still in California.
So you got that good weather, that sun shining down.
Yeah, we have. Where are you located?
Hartford, Connecticut.
Oh, well, you're on the opposite side. Opposite, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's cold here. It's cold right now.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Oh,
and I came to California after my boyfriend died in Iwo Jima, and I was here on a vacation, and I stayed. So I've been a California girl since 1945.
wow.
Yeah, but I know what winters are like. 50 below. Many times I remember that.
Do you think social media has changed people? Because you've been around so long, you're the perfect person to ask, because social media has only been around for about 15 years, maybe 20, but.
Yeah, I really haven't thought too much about it. Social media has certainly changed the world, really. I mean, that's the way you get to people today is through social media, and not so much as we did before, like television but I don't know that. Yes, I think it has changed. It
Yeah.
changed people.
Just like television, when television came out, it changed too, right?
Changed people. People went into television and they were glued to it. And look, then they were glued to now they're in the iPhones. I mean, they're just, you can't, oh, where's my phone? Where's my phone? My
Right,
phone.
right.
I mean, it's almost part of your part of you today.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you just call up and the things I think technology has, yes, it's made things faster, but it's made things slower. Can't get anything done. I mean, you can't when you want to call. I could get something done on this phone in about 2 minutes. I have to go. A lot of times people don't want to be bothered with the phone, so I'm in there just typing away the message, and then I said, oh gosh, wait a minute, I've spelled this wrong. Wait a minute, I have to go back and I have to check it. And by the time you check it, you've spent all this time making it perfect to send out an email. So where you call up, get the answer, and then you're done and you're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
That's what that part bothers me, because I was able to get things all done on the phone.
Right.
And there are a lot of times if I'm dealing with somebody, I said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I said, I can't write all this down. I mean, it's just, it's just too much for me to write. So I said, I'm calling you up and ask you this one question. All I need is an answer. And, so I don't know whether you encounter that, but
people are used to texting,
I know they are. And then, when people when texting, people used to say, oh, how old are you? You're 85 or 86. Do you know how to, you mean you text? You mean you know how to text? I said, yes, I had to learn to text.
What was life like when you were 20?
Oh, well, when I was 20 years old, I was living in Los Angeles. I was going, let's see, I was going to NBC UCLA Radio Institute. I wanted to be in radio. And so that's what I was doing. Life was very simple. They didn't have the freeways were just being built. So there's one freeway that was being built. We've heard about this freeway being built.
Wow.
Freeways everywhere now. And the valley, out in the valley of California, if anybody's been out here, it was, a lot of farmland. So it's all grown up.
Were there televisions back then?
No, when I was 20, we were starting to hear about television. I mean, coming in, but not. No, it wasn't in. I wasn't in yet. And then that's when we heard about television when I was 20, and then I took a little class in not acting so much, but being yourself and being, because if television comes in, you want to be this way or that way. And
right.
So, and then television, I was on the first in San Francisco. Let's see, how old was I? 21, I believe, the end of 21. That's when television first came into San Francisco. And we were, they did everything from the transmitters. They had these transmitters on top of the mountains,
Yeah.
And that's when I got my first television job, and I opened a loaf of bread and took it out and went, good. That was a commercial, and we drive up to the transmitter every night to do that one commercial. Television came on at 6 o'clock at night.
Mm.
And then that's when I got on television with Les Malloy. We started at 4:30 in the afternoon. That's when television started. Then television started at 4:30 in the afternoon. We had a 4:30 to 6 show with 12-piece orchestra, which belonged to ABC Radio. And so, but we transferred it up. We did everything from the transmitter at first. And we were in the old Sutro Mansion, in the ballroom. They had the ballroom, and then and that's where we that's where we did the show from. This ballroom, and then we moved down to the NBC building in San Francisco, and then took over studio there and offices there.
And here
ABC rented from NBC.
And here I thought I was old school because I remember VHS tapes.
You what?
I said I thought I was old school remembering VHS tapes, but you go
oh yeah. Yeah.
You go long before that.
Yeah, right. It was quite interesting. Yeah, and everything was live. We did our live show live, and I'll have to tell you a little story. We went. We had a car that we were showing, and then in the studio. This was now we're downtown, and you can drive but you can't drive into the studio. But to get the car in the studio, they had to take a door off the car to get it into the studio so we could sell the car. And so the fellow I worked with, I was a Girl Friday in those days. Today they call him co-host, but he was talking about the car, and we were standing there with the car, and he opens the door and the door falls off because they forgot to put the door back on. So it was things like that happened in the live shows.
That's amazing.
Everything was live. You had to watch your P's and Q's in those days.
Yeah.
And I could not say bust, or he could not say, and he'd have to say chest.
Right.
You couldn't say, there were certain things you could not say on television.
And now it's like, whatever.
No, when I think back. Yeah, right.
And the dress codes were different, right? Like now women could walk out half naked.
I never went downtown San Francisco without dressing, and maybe a hat, oftentimes gloves, and we always dressed, and Jack dressed to the teeth, always. I mean, we had this little outfit he wore, on the show, but if he went out to dinner or anything, everything was tie, and color was perfect. Everybody dressed in those days, in the 50s, 40s, 50s. Yeah.
Right.
But the dress code has changed a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
All right, Elaine, this has been a great talk. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks for listening to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese. If this episode opened your heart, feel free to share on social media and tell your loved ones. Also, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may peace be with you.